Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The iPad buzzed on the counter and flashed a banner. I reached for it without thinking, just a quick swipe. One small line of text stopped my hand midair. Water service interruption scheduled, then my husband's name. I swear I felt my pulse hit my throat. I am Emily, 32, and I wish I had looked away. Back then it felt like nothing, just a boring notification. Now I know that tap was the first domino. I leaned over the screen and my thumb kept moving. Curiosity beat common sense in about half a second. The email opened and filled the display in front of me. My first thought was stupidly practical and almost calm. Great, another bill issue, maybe we missed a payment. My brain grabbed the most harmless explanation it could find. I was already lying to myself while the page loaded. The subject line mentioned planned repairs and a temporary shutdown. Nothing dramatic on its own, just city maintenance stuff. My shoulders even relaxed for a heartbeat, which is hilarious now. Then my eyes landed on the service address near the top. I did not recognize a single part of that line. Same city, totally different street, nowhere near our place. I read it again out loud under my breath. The zip code was ours, the rest was a stranger. This was not a typo, one digit off and fixable. The whole thing felt like walking into the wrong house. Under that strange address sat my husband's full legal name. Middle initial, everything perfectly matched like a neat little stamp. The account number was long, ugly, completely meaningless to me. His name next to that other address kept pulling my focus. It looked official, clean, and absolutely not accidental. You know that moment when your body reacts before logic. My hands got weirdly cold, but my face felt hot. I kept blinking, like maybe the letters would shuffle around. Nothing moved, obviously, except my own breathing getting shallow. Every part of me wanted this to be boring. I told myself I was overreacting and doing that thing. You know, building a conspiracy from random data on a screen. Normal wives trust their husbands, normal people ignore notifications. That little guilt speech helped for 3 whole seconds. Then I scrolled down because of course I did. The start date for the shutdown was in a few days. There was a time window and some generic apology sentence. The wording was dry and official, no drama there. Still, that unfamiliar street glared at me from the middle. It felt like a secret printed in plain black text. I hovered my thumb over the home button and hesitated. I could close it, pretend I never saw anything strange. Lock the screen, put the iPad back, keep the peace. My chest actually hurt at the thought of opening this door. I already knew I was going to kick it anyway. Here is the ugly truth I see now looking back. I was not just curious, I was already suspicious. I had no evidence, just a bad feeling and a banner. Instead of admitting that, I told myself I was checking. Checking what exactly, I did not dare to name. I went back up to the top and reread everything. Sender, City Utilities Department, no scam vibes, nothing obviously fake. There was even a contact number and a case reference. The email looked more real than my own denial. I swallowed hard and traced the address with my eyes. I tried to imagine some harmless reason for that location. Maybe he helped someone set up their account once. Maybe it belonged to a relative I had somehow never heard. Every excuse I invented sounded thin and shaky out loud. None of them explained why he never mentioned another service address. I caught my reflection in the dark part of the screen. My expression looked tight and almost unfamiliar, jaw clenched. I remember thinking, you are about to create a problem. Because once you suspect something, you start seeing patterns everywhere. Once you see them, you cannot go back to blind. Somewhere down the hall, the shower turned off with a thud. Water pipes groaned through the walls, which felt darkly funny. I stood frozen with a water email in my hands. If he walked in, I had zero excuse ready. My fingers finally moved faster than my doubts. I hit the home button and the email vanished from view. The mail icon shrank back into the app grid like nothing. I cleared the little notification badge with a quick tap. Every move felt sneaky, exaggerated, way louder than it really was. It was just me and that stupid buzzing in my ears. I set the iPad back in its exact old spot. Same angle, same distance from the edge, yes, I checked. That is how guilty I already felt over one email. I stood there pretending to wipe crumbs that did not matter. My brain was locked on that unknown street name. From the bathroom, he called my name over the running fan. "Hey, can you grab my phone if it rings?" His voice sounded normal, easy, like any other day. Mine actually cracked when I answered, which he probable. "Why, missed?" I answered too fast, like someone hiding something obvious. I should have asked him right then, just blurted it. "What is this other address with your name all over? Why is the city shutting off water somewhere you never mention?" Instead, I swallowed the question and almost tasted metal. Fear felt safer than whatever answer I might hear. Here is the worst part, and I hate admitting it. A small piece of me liked having this secret suspicion. Like I suddenly held a loose thread he did not know about. I could pull when I wanted and watch what unraveled. That tiny power rush should have warned me about myself. I walked away from the counter, but not from the thought. The address repeated in my head like a short broken song. Street name, house number, the way the words fit together. By the time he walked into the kitchen, I knew it. I had practically memorized the location I pretended to ignore. He walked in drying his hair and reached for the tablet. My hand landed on it first like a reflex. "I already checked your messages," I heard myself say. The lie came out smooth, too smooth, and it scared me. He paused, that half second where everything felt stretched. "Anything important?" He leaned his weight on the counter. I forced my shoulders loose and shrugged like it was nothing. "Spam and some bill stuff," I muttered, eyes on the sink. Inside, every nerve braced for one more question. He grabbed his phone and started scrolling through his own alerts. I watched the angle of his jaw, not the screen. No stiffening, no weird blink, just bored thumb flicks. If he was hiding something here, he was very practiced. That calmness rattled me more than any outburst. "You good?" He glanced over like I might snap. "Yeah, just thinking about work," I answered too quickly. I fiddled with a dish towel to keep my hands occupied. The address repeated in my head with every fold and twist. I could feel the words pressing against my tongue. He moved around the kitchen, normal little movements, normal sound. That regular routine made my suspicion feel dirty and childish. I kept asking myself who exactly I thought I was. Detective, paranoid spouse, or idiot chasing pixels on a screen. None of those options felt good, but I kept going. When he stepped out to grab something from the bedroom, I exhaled. I opened my phone, locked my jaw, and opened a notes app. I typed out the street name from memory, every single letter. House number, city, everything I had seen in that message. My fingers shook just enough to mess up the first try. I corrected it, stared at the line, and hesitated. Once that data lived on my phone, this became deliberate. Not an accidental glance anymore, a conscious search. It felt like crossing a line I could not erase. I pressed save anyway and felt my stomach dip. The moment he returned, I flipped to a different screen. Some mindless app flashed up, harmless and familiar. He did not seem interested, which almost offended me. Here I was spinning out, and he hummed to himself. That mismatch between us dug under my skin. We moved through the rest of the evening on autopilot. Short comments about dinner, some casual joke about his coworker. I responded on cue, but my attention stayed somewhere else. I kept checking the clock, waiting for my chance. Every minute felt like dragging a heavy bag uphill. When he finally mentioned being tired and headed down the hall, relief hit. I listened for the bathroom fan, the usual nighttime sequence. As soon as water started running, I grabbed my phone. That saved line sat there, quiet and heavy. I opened the browser and pasted the address in. The map loaded fast and pinned a spot across town. Residential block, streets I had never walked, nothing familiar. Zooming in showed a regular house shape on the corner. The little pin pulsed like a heartbeat on my screen. I knew I was being dramatic, and I did not stop. I switched tabs and searched the address with his full name. The first results were boring listings, nothing juicy at first. I kept going, clicking further than I ever usually do. Buried on one page, I saw his name paired with that location. It looked like a service record, not ancient, not brand new. It was one thing to see his name in an email. Seeing it again in a separate database punched harder. Whatever this place was, it was not a random glitch. That tiny hopeful idea of a mix-up started dying. I could actually feel my denial shrinking in real time. I heard the shower cut off and my thumb flew up. Screens closed, apps shuffled, everything wiped to something boring. I locked the phone and laid it face down. My heart raced like I had done something illegal. All I had done was look at public information. He came back in, hair damp, mood relaxed, nothing off. "Wanna watch something?" He dropped onto the couch. I used the whole tired excuse and stayed near the counter. "Think I'll just go to bed, Arlie," I murmured. I was afraid my face would give everything away. In our bedroom, I plugged my phone in and lay back. I stared at the ceiling while the address repeated like static. I kept thinking, if I confront him and I am wrong. If this is some boring explanation, I am the problem. That thought pressed down almost harder than the suspicion. At the same time, another question poked at me relentlessly. If he has nothing to hide, why does this feel secret? Why is there a place carrying his name that I never hear? My mind bounced between those two corners like a trapped ball. Either way, something in our marriage had shifted tonight. Looking back now, this is where I should have stopped. I could have thrown out the address and pretended ignorance. People survive on half-truths all the time and stay married. But once I saw proof outside that first message, I changed. I stopped being just a spouse and started being an investigator. I rolled onto my side and watched him walk in later. He climbed into bed relaxed, humming some song under his breath. He reached over and rested a hand on my shoulder. That familiar weight felt different now, heavier somehow. I kept my breathing slow, and even until he drifted off. As soon as his breath settled into that deeper rhythm, I moved. I reached for my phone again and turned the brightness down. The house felt quiet, too quiet for what I was doing. I reopened the Notes app and added one more line. "Ask about water shut-off notice," I typed, then erased it. I could not even write the confrontation without panicking. Instead, I added something vague and safer for future me. "Ask about other address," I wrote and left it there. It looked harmless on the screen, soft and non-threatening. I knew exactly how explosive those 3 words really were. I unlocked his iPad before he left the bedroom. My fingers moved fast, like they had been rehearsing overnight. Mail app updates, that utilities logo staring at me again. My chest thumped so hard I thought it might echo. I opened the message and forced myself not to blink. This time I studied every line like a contract I might sign. Reference number, service window, his full name lined up with that property. I noticed a tiny link for view in browser near the bottom. My thumb hovered, then tapped, hungry for anything extra. If I crossed the line already, I was sprinting now. The browser version loaded with more detail than the notification. There was a confirmation date from a week earlier. That meant he had known about this shutdown before I did. Something in my stomach twisted at that timestamp. He was planning around something I knew nothing about. I snapped the first screenshot before I could second guess. Then another of the expanded header with account details. I felt sick while doing it, like stealing from myself. Still, I checked the images folder long enough to confirm. All of it sat there, clear and readable, waiting. Forwarding it to my own email hit me next. That felt smarter than trusting his device to keep my proof. I tapped the share icon, found my address in his contacts. I kept the subject vague, just a boring word about statement. My thumb hovered over send, shaking more than I liked. I heard the bathroom door creak and my pulse spiked. "Babe, you seen my watch?" his voice carried down the hallway. For a second, I genuinely considered tossing the tablet behind me. Instead, I hit send and flipped back to the inbox. The move felt reckless and precise at the same time. He stepped into the kitchen while I pretended to scroll casually. "Looking for something?" he asked, adjusting the strap on his wrist. "Just killing time," I answered, tapping on some random newsletter. I forced a little yawn, like I might go back to sleep. My thoughts were sprinting laps around that utilities message. As soon as he turned toward the fridge, I went back. Sent folder, one new email glowing at the top. I opened it long enough to confirm it went to me. Then I deleted it from sent, trash, everything I could reach. I knew that did not guarantee anything, but I needed control. That was the moment I realized how far I had slid. I was managing evidence like someone expecting a future trial. Not a courtroom, just some ugly conversation I felt coming. I wish I could say I stopped there. You already know I did not stop there. Later that morning at my own laptop, the message waited. There it was in my inbox, perfectly normal, perfectly damning. I opened it and zoomed into the unique account number. I created a new folder with the most boring label possible. I dragged the email inside like I was locking a drawer. Then I checked my phone and opened the camera roll. Those screenshots from the tablet had synced automatically to my gallery. Seeing them on my personal device made everything feel more permanent. I started a hidden album and dropped the images inside. The folder name I chose was so dull it felt sarcastic. Here is where my brain did that defensive little dance. I told myself I was protecting both of us with this. If I turned out wrong, I could quietly delete everything later. No harm, no foul, just me being overcautious and dramatic. That story kept me from admitting what I really believed. Around lunch, I tested him the way cowards do. I called him while staring at the open email on my screen. Quick question, I started, trying to sound slightly annoyed, not terrified. Did we ever get notice about any city work this month? The pause on the line lasted just a hair too long. Not that I remember, he answered finally, voice light and even. If something comes through, I will forward it, don't worry. Forward it where exactly, when it already lived in my inbox? My hand tightened around the phone until my fingers ached. I let the silence hang half a second longer than usual. You sure nothing about water or repairs? I pressed, still casual. I made it sound like a scheduling thing, not an accusation. Pretty sure, he replied, then changed the subject to his workload. That quick topic change hit me almost as hard as the email. He closed that door so fast I heard it slam in my head. I went along with his new subject because of course I did. We joked about some coworker drama, slipped back into our routine. On the surface, everything sounded normal, even friendly. Underneath, I replayed his tiny hesitation over and over. You know that feeling when a smile starts to look like a mask? When we hung up, I opened my secret folder again. It was ridiculous how often I checked that same message. Like it might morph into something harmless if I stared long enough. Each time I read it, the confirmation date hit harder. He had known, and he had lied by omission at least. That afternoon, I added more to my notes app list. Not just ask about other address anymore, that felt childish now. I wrote down the service interruption date and time window. Then I added drive by that place on that day. My thumb hovered before adding, or sooner if he acts weird. Reading those lines back, I almost scared myself. Who writes surveillance plans about their own marriage on a Tuesday? Yet the list sat there and I did not erase it. I locked my phone and pressed it flat against my desk. For a minute, I just listened to my own breathing. That night, I watched him unlock his phone on the couch. His face relaxed, a small smile at something on the screen. The picture of him living some separate digital life hit hard. I caught myself leaning over, trying to see more than I should. He shifted the device closer to his chest without even noticing. Everything okay? He asked, half glancing toward me. Just tired, I replied, rubbing my forehead like it hurt. What I wanted to say was, show me your notifications. Show me every message tied to that other place I found. Instead, I swallowed it and tasted that familiar metallic edge. Before bed, I checked that utilities email one more time. I memorized the upcoming shutoff day so it lived in my head. No calendar reminder, nothing that could flash on a shared screen. Just a mental circle around that future morning across town. I knew I would be there before the water stopped. I slid his iPad across the table and pushed it near him. Can you fix this thing? I asked, picking at my thumbnail. It froze again when I tried to open your mail. The lie arrived easy, like I had practiced it in my sleep. Watching his face felt more important than whatever he did next. He rested his hand on the tablet and frowned a little. What were you trying to look at? His thumb hovered over the screen. Just the usual junk, I answered, keeping my eyes on his wrist. If it keeps lagging, maybe you should update your passwords. I threw that in lightly, like a random suggestion, not a trap. He unlocked the device and tapped through the icons without urgency. Looks fine to me, he murmured, swiping through folders and apps. I watched for any flicker when the mail icon flashed at him. Nothing obvious, just calm scrolling and bored blinking. That steady composure made my skin itch. Maybe it was the internet, I muttered, grabbing a mug just to move. You know how it gets weird sometimes. He glanced up, one eyebrow raised, a tiny question there. Does it happen a lot or just this morning? The way he tracked my story made me choose every word. Off and on, I replied, lowering my voice so it sounded tired. Sometimes it freezes when I open statements or billing stuff. I let that word hang in the air on purpose. His fingers paused for a heartbeat, then kept gliding. I caught that microstall and tucked it away. You really do not need to manage my accounts, he said, almost amused. It is mostly automated, I barely touch any of it. That sentence hit me like a shove because I knew otherwise. There was at least one thing he had touched very recently. I forced a small laugh so I would not explode. I like knowing what comes through, I told him, leaning on the counter. Just in case something important shows up and you miss it. He set the tablet down and looked directly at me. Important like what? His tone stayed light but his eyes tightened. It felt like we were both circling a hole in the floor. I went for the indirect route because that had become my specialty. City stuff maybe, I answered, fiddling with a spoon near my hand. Notices about maintenance or service changes, that kind of thing. I watched his jaw, his shoulders, anything that might twitch. He only shrugged, which somehow felt worse than a shout. If something major came up, I would remember, he replied, tapping the table. No one sends anything interesting, trust me. My pulse thudded at the words, something major, in that calm voice. That utilities notice felt very major to me right then. I bit the inside of my cheek before I answered. You sure nothing weird came through last week? I pressed gently. Because I thought I saw something about a shut-off date. The word left my mouth and hung there like smoke. His head snapped up just a little faster than normal. For a second we just stared at each other. Shut off, he repeated, brow pulled together like he was confused. That sounds pretty serious, are you mixing up old mail? He gave a short chuckle that did not reach his eyes. Trust me, if our water was getting cut, I would notice. He held my gaze longer than usual, like he dared me to challenge him. I am not saying it was ours, I replied, voice staying even. Could have been some random error addressed wrong. That word ours tasted odd when I said it. I watched to see if he would jump at the implication. He only nodded slowly and glanced back at the tablet. Systems glitch all the time, he muttered, almost to himself. Probably just junk routed through the wrong profile. He spoke like someone used to smoothing over messes. I could not tell if he was calming me or dodging. Both possibilities made my chest tighten. While he scrolled, his phone buzzed on the table between us. The screen lit up with a number I did not recognize. His hand moved quickly, flipping it over so I lost the view. Spam callers are getting aggressive, he joked, sliding it into his pocket. That speed did not match the casual tone at all. I leaned back and studied him instead of answering. He noticed and tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly. What is going on with you lately? He asked, voice soft now. You are jumpy and quiet, like you are hiding something. That twist of accusation almost made me laugh out loud. Work has been a lot, I replied, rubbing my neck slowly. And I barely slept, my brain would not shut down. That part was true, just not for the reason he assumed. I am fine, just trying to stay on top of things. I avoided words like worried because they might crack me open. He studied me a second longer, then let it drop. Tell me if you need help with anything, he said, reaching for his keys. Bills, chores, whatever, we are a team, remember. The word team made me want to throw something across the room. Instead, I nodded and walked to the sink. As he moved toward the door, I tried one more probe. Hey, I called, keeping my tone light enough to pass. If any notices pop up that look strange, will you show me? He paused with his hand on the knob and glanced back. Of course, he answered, smiling, there is nothing to hide. That final line landed harder than he probably expected. Nothing to hide, while I had proof of at least one secret. The gap between his words and reality hummed under my skin. I kept my face neutral while the urge to confront screamed. He walked out and the lock clicked like a period. The minute his car pulled away, I grabbed my phone. I opened my notes list and added a new line under the others. Confrontation test, he denied any notice watch reactions from now on. Reading it back, it looked like a lab entry on a human experiment. Apparently the subject this time was my own marriage. Looking back, that breakfast scene feels almost small compared to what followed. But that was the day I realized something important about him. He could look me in the eyes and reject reality without blinking. And I could look right back and pretend I believed him. Two performers sharing one kitchen, both rehearsing for war. His message popped up while I was pretending to work. "Hey, I have to stay late tonight, big project, don't wait up." I stared at the words until the typing cursor faded. Then he added, "I'll probably grab something on the way home." That last line snapped everything into place. I did not answer right away. I watched the bubble sit there, innocent and casual. My mind went straight to that other street without trying. It felt like he had drawn an arrow toward it. All he needed to do was say late, and I filled the rest. "Okay, good luck," I finally typed back. "Text me when you're on your way." I added a tiny happy face I did not mean. My thumb hovered before hitting send, then I exhaled hard. I had just given him permission to disappear. 5 minutes later, another ping from him. "Thanks, sorry for the last-minute heads up." That small apology made me clench my jaw. He knew I liked plans, routines, some kind of structure. And here he was, loosening the whole day with 3 lines. I opened my notes app and scrolled to my secret list. "Drive by that place on that day," stared up at me. I edited one word and turned it into "tonight." That tiny change felt huge, like signing a decision. My hands shook just enough to blur the letters. You ever catch yourself rehearsing excuses before you act? I started building alibis without even standing up. If he called, I would say I went to a friend's. If anyone asked later, I was out running late errands. I stacked fake explanations like dominoes in my head. Around 5, I heard his car in the driveway. He walked in with a distracted energy I did not recognize. His bag hit the chair and he checked his phone immediately. "Today turned into a circus," he muttered, rubbing his forehead. "I might be back late, just warning you now." I kept my voice calm, almost supportive. "No problem, want something quick before you go." He waved it off, glancing at the time. "I'll grab a sandwich or something, I shouldn't be gone that long." The word should dug under my skin. I watched him move around the house, gathering his usual stuff. Keys, wallet, identification badge, the normal leaving ritual. Nothing looked different. That annoyed me. How do you prepare to lie and still look that relaxed? It made me question my own face in moments like this. "Need anything while I'm out?" he asked, lingering at the doorway. I shook my head and forced a small smile. "I'll probably clean up and crash early," I answered. My voice sounded almost bored, which was exactly the goal. Inside, my heart hammered like I was about to rob a bank. He stepped closer and brushed his lips across my forehead. "I'll call if it runs really late," he promised, eyes steady. If I played back that moment alone, I might trust him. In real time, I noticed one tiny detail. He never once mentioned the name of his big project. After the door shut, I waited. Not long, just enough to make sure he was fully gone. I watched through the front window as his car pulled away. Only when he turned at the corner did I move. I felt like a spring finally released. I grabbed my bag and shoved my phone inside. No makeup change, no special outfit, nothing dramatic. The point was to look like any ordinary driver on any night. I locked the door and listened to the click behind me. That sound felt like crossing another line. In the car, I opened the map app and typed the address again. The route lit up with that little blue path across town. Estimated time glared from the top of the screen. I checked the clock and compared it to his alleged schedule. If I hurried, I might beat him there. On the drive, my brain ran 2 movies at once. In one, I arrived and found a simple, boring reason. Maybe a rental he forgot to mention, something long-term and dull. In the other, I pulled up and saw his car already parked. You can guess which version felt more believable to me. I turned the radio on and off in the first 10 minutes. Silence felt too loud, noise felt fake. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. Every red light felt personal, like the city slowing me down. I caught myself breathing in shallow bursts and forced deeper pulls. At one long light, I almost turned around. The thought hit fast, bright, almost tempting. I could go home, make dinner, let him keep his secrets. Plenty of people live that way and call it peace. I sat there and realized I would never respect myself again. So I kept going. Block after block, the surroundings shifted into unfamiliar streets. The map voice counted down the remaining turns. I turned it down but left it on anyway. Hearing the directions out loud made everything feel more official. When I finally entered that neighborhood, my throat went dry. Houses lined both sides, quiet and unremarkable. Kids, bikes, parked cars, normal life humming along. Nothing screamed affair from the windshield. The normalcy made my suspicion feel both crazier and sharper. Turn right, the navigation instructed, so I did. There it announced, your destination is on the left. I slowed down and rolled past the number painted near the curb. Seeing those digits in real life hit harder than any email. This was not just a listing on a screen anymore. I did not park in front like an amateur. I kept going, turned at the next corner and looped back. I found a spot half a block away with a clear view. From there, I could see the driveway and the front door. My hands shook when I turned off the engine. For a minute, I just sat completely still. No music, no air, just me and the ticking in my ears. I watched the house and waited for something obvious. A car pulling in, a person coming out, any clue. Nothing happened, which made my thoughts spiral faster. I pulled out my phone and checked the time again. If he had gone straight from our place to work, he would still be driving. If he had gone straight here, he could already be inside. That gap in possibility made my skin prickle. I felt like the last person to arrive at a secret meeting. Another car rolled past slowly, and I sank lower in my seat. Paranoia kicked in full force. What if I looked like some creep staking out strangers? What if someone called the police before I got answers? The idea barely slowed me down. I opened the Notes app and scrolled to my latest entries. I added a new line with the current time plus one word. Parked. Then another. Watching. Sitting there, I realized something that made my stomach drop. If his car appeared and I did nothing, that was a choice. If his car never showed and I still had doubts, that was another. Either way, I had already changed the shape of our relationship. I was no longer waiting at home hoping. I took one deep breath and unlocked the door. I stepped out, legs slightly unsteady, and closed it quietly. From here, the house looked closer than it had from inside. Every step toward it felt loud, even on the empty sidewalk. I could feel my pulse in the soles of my feet. I stopped at the edge of the driveway and listened. No voices, no music, nothing I could use. The windows gave me nothing from where I stood. I wiped my palms on my jeans and looked at the door. I knew the next move would change everything. I walked up the driveway and hit the doorbell. My finger left a faint print on the button and lingered. For a second I prayed nobody would answer and end this. Then I hated myself for wanting the easy way out. I kept my feet planted in front of that door. Nothing happened at first, just quiet on the other side. My pulse pounded so loudly it felt like someone knocking back. I counted slowly under my breath to keep from running. At 8, I lifted my hand to ring again. Something to my left caught my eye and stopped me. A small metal box stood near the entry steps. The row of little doors had names taped under each slot. I stepped away from the porch and leaned closer. His full name sat on one label in neat letters. Right under it there was another last name. I froze so hard my jaw actually dropped. 2 separate lines stacked like a family roster. Him, and under that, a woman's surname I did not know. No initials, no vague abbreviations, just clear and casual. Like this setup had existed for a while. I heard movement above and snapped my head up. The front handle rattled, then turned from the inside. Instinct made me step back off the landing fast. The door opened, but not the way I expected. She stepped out as if this was her routine. She was about my height, maybe a little shorter. Hair tied back loosely, keys looped around one finger. A grocery bag hung from her free hand by the straps. She almost walked straight into me on the path. Her eyes widened when she realized I was standing there. "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you," she blurted. Her voice carried that distracted tone of someone mid-errand. I stared at the set of keys swinging between us. One of them had the same rubber cover as his spare. That detail hit me harder than her actual words. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked, shifting the bag. I dragged my gaze away from the keys to her face. My tongue felt heavy, but the question pushed itself out. "Does a man named," I said his full name clearly. "Does he live here?" Her expression flickered fast, guilt then confusion then defense. The bag rustled as her grip tightened around the handles. "Who's asking?" she replied, shoulders squaring just a little. Her eyes scanned my clothes, my face, searching for context. I watched the moment she placed me somewhere in his life. "I'm his wife," I answered, voice low but steady. The word came out sharper than I meant it to. For a heartbeat, everything between us went completely silent. She blinked twice like someone stunned by a slap. Then she let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Of all possible reactions, that little exhale shook me. Not mocking, not amused, more like tired relief. "Of course you are," she muttered, rubbing her forehead. She looked past me toward the street like she expected a car. No car, just my vehicle parked halfway down the block. I zeroed in on the key ring again. "Where did you get that spare?" I asked, pointing. My hand trembled just enough to make the gesture jerky. She glanced down, then pulled the ring into her palm. "He gave it to me," she answered, not soft, not loud. Something cracked in my chest right there on the path. Not a dramatic breaking sound, more like a quiet tear. "He pays the water here under his name," she added. The comment came out flat, like she had rehearsed it. This place would be dry without his account. I swallowed so hard it hurt. "That notice about service being cut off," I managed. The words scraped on the way out of my throat. "You got that too, didn't you?" Her eyes snapped back to mine. "So you saw it," she said, shoulders dropping a little. "He told me he'd handle it before the shut-off date." Hearing that sent a rush of cold through my arms. He hadn't just opened the message, he had discussed it. He just skipped the part where I existed. "He told you what exactly?" I pushed, fingers curling into my palms. I needed details, anything that made this less foggy. Her mouth pressed into a thin line for a moment. "That he'd be here when the workers came through," she said. "He said he didn't want me dealing with strangers alone." That sentence landed like a punch to the ribs. I pictured him with that same protective tone at our place. Same phrasing repurposed, aimed at someone else's front door. The air around us felt suddenly heavier, thicker, harder to pull. I took a step back just to breathe again. "How long has he been doing that?" I asked. I heard my own voice harden on the last word. She looked down at her shoes, then back up at me. "A while," she answered, choosing that vague measure on purpose. "Long enough for my name to end up under his." I stared at the mailbox again like it might move. Two names, one above the other, permanent as far as paper goes. He had stitched himself into this building like it was normal. And I was the one standing outside, asking for directions. My throat burned, but no tears came, not yet. "Did he tell you I existed?" I asked, quieter now. No edge this time, just a plain question hanging between us. Her jaw worked for a second before she replied. "He called you his ex who wouldn't let go," she said. "He never used the word married." There it was, the ugliest part, delivered in one line. My knees wobbled enough that I shifted my weight. In that moment, I saw exactly how he split us. I was the problem in his version, she was the future. I wanted to throw something through the nearest window. My phone buzzed in my pocket and made me jump. I pulled it out on instinct and looked at the screen. A text from him lit up over the background. "Running later than I thought, still at the office." My thumb rested on the glass while I stared at the lie. She watched my face tighten while I read his message. "That from him?" she asked, voice rough around the edges now. I turned the screen so she could see the words. Her features twisted, and she let out a bitter little sound. "He told me he was stuck in traffic on the way here." So he was lying to both of us in real time. Two different stories running in parallel, both wrong. Something inside me finally snapped from disbelief into clarity. "This is his place," I said, motioning toward the door. "But you live here with him, don't you?" She looked at the building instead of me. Her fingers tightened again around that key ring. "He keeps clothes here," she admitted, choosing each word carefully. "He stays over most weeks, pays half the costs." Every sentence stripped another layer off my old reality. I wanted to scream right on that step. I wanted to rage at her, at him, at myself. Instead, I heard my voice come out almost calm. Thanks, I said, which sounded wrong even to my ears. I needed to hear it from someone who wasn't him. She flinched at that and shifted the bag in her grip. I'm sorry, she murmured, gaze dropping to the ground. I thought you knew more than you did. Her apology didn't fix a thing, but it landed. At least one person out here wasn't actively rewriting the truth. I turned, walked back down the drive, and didn't look back. My legs moved on their own, clumsy but steady enough. Every step away from that porch felt like leaving a burned-out shell. On the sidewalk, I finally let air rush out of my lungs. My hand still shook, but my mind had gone oddly clear. When I reached my car, I paused with my hand on the handle. My phone vibrated again with another text from him. Miss you, can't wait to get home tonight. I stared at the words, then at the house in the distance. Home suddenly meant two separate addresses in one sentence. Looking back, that was the exact second something in me changed. I stopped trying to prove anything to myself about him. The screenshots, the records, the mailbox names, her key. I had enough confirmation to bury the version of us I clung to. I opened the car door and stepped into whatever came next.